Happy Friday, everybody. It's Buckeye Friday. We are here. We are back. The best damn pod in the land with another pod mashup. We have Luke from the Tailgate group of Power 5 pod, right? Did I say that right? I'm joking. I'm joking.
The Power 5 podcast. But yeah, it's the Tailgate. That's all we need.
Yeah, I was just messing around a little bit. We were talking about beforehand. So Luke, glad to have you. Excited to have you. As you know, I'm a super homer. I live in a scarlet and gray bubble. Dan, I think, resides close or nearly close to me as far as living in our little scarlet and gray bubble. So we're happy to have you from a national perspective. So, Luke, tell us a little bit about the Tailgate. And if folks don't know who you are or haven't listened yet, great podcast. You guys do a lot. So fill us in.
Thank you. Yeah, so we started, honestly, one of my co-hosts, Michael, is a Tennessee fan, so he's a UT fan. And we really started it's tough, but they get their shot every 15 to 20 years, and then they go back into hibernation. But so we just talked. We would have conversations at work. We both kind of take the same approach of like, we're a little less homer. I'm an Ohio State fan. He's a Tennessee fan. We'll call out kind of what we don't like about our teams. And he just approached one day and was like, hey, let's, would you want to start a podcast? Sure. Why not? Dennis, who's the other guy, one of his friends, he actually coached some junior college ball. He coached some high school ball. And he also coached, was on the defensive side for UCLA for a little while. So he brings a little bit more of the knowledge and credibility to our podcast, our show. But yeah, we really just try to cover everything. We try to cover the news. We want to talk about the games, Heisman, just kind of try and do our best, the best we can at just making sure we're hitting all the big teams, all the big news, kind of keeping all that together.
Who's Dennis a fan of?
This is one of the kind of the show jokes is that he doesn't really have a team.
He's Switzerland.
He's neutral, but he's a Pack guy, and so he's very disappointed that the Pack is happening. He grew up in Southern California, so he watched a lot of the guys, Reggie Bush, USC, UCLA, all those teams. So he kind of just cheers for all of them. Wants Pack to do well, but now he's, we'll see where he lands now once everything happens.
So we did a segment recently, and that you're saying that Tennessee has something once every 20 years. I just want to ask you your perspective nationally. Then Dan and I talked about how Ohio State really has never not been relevant in the college football picture, and I was just curious: do you track with that? Does that make sense?
I mean, I definitely think it makes sense, and this is one of the reasons why sometimes listening to Ohio State fans talk really frustrates me, because you have all of these fans saying, oh, well, Ryan Day doesn't win this year, he needs to be gone. And every time I hear fans say that, my first question is, who is going to leave their team, who's good enough to replace him and is going to come? Because listen, good things don't always last. We've had a good thing that's lasted pretty much the entirety of the organization. That could very easily stop. So, I just want people to kind of, again, step back, take a look at that perspective. But when you look at the track record, I mean, in the last, 30 years, the only time that we really had a season was that Luke Fickell season between Tressel and Meyer. So and even that one, guy getting his first shot, it was, even though it was a down year, it wasn't that down. You knew something was coming. You knew somebody else was coming in. So, but I think it tracks. There's not a lot of teams who can have that consistent success that Ohio State has.
Yeah, I was just curious. I think that's fair. I know that the Tressel had 1 year where he had a down-ish year. It was like 8-4 or something like that after the bowl game. But Ohio State affects the landscape of of football. Every year. Their games, they matter. What happens with them matters, and not every team can say that. And okay, cool. All right. So Dan, we're not crazy.
If we were to get rid of Ryan, couldn't we just promote Brian Hartline? I mean, he's a fantastic recruiter, and he played at Ohio State, so he's obviously would be an amazing head coach, right?
I mean, Day.
Here we go.
My tongue is stuck in my cheek. I'm sorry.
They did not give him the offensive reins like everybody thought he was going to do the other year. So, I mean, from a recruiting perspective, 100%. I mean, there's not, if he's not the best recruiter in the nation, he's number 2. And there's no way that you can
behind Tim Walton.
Behind Walton,
behind Tim Walton, yeah.
Especially after getting Delaney the last week. So, but no, I mean, Brian Hartline, you would be throwing that out there and hoping and going.
I was being
potential.
100% facetious, but that is a narrative within our fan base.
It 100, and that's why it's so hard, because you're like, who is joking and who is being 100% serious here? You can't tell.
Well, I was about to reach for the whiskey in my bottom drawer when Dan said that. So
I'm a big defender of Ryan. I do think that he had some maturity and growing up to do, and he's done that. And
every year,
and I think when he's had to make hard decisions, he's made them. I'm hoping the next hard decision he has to make is not regarding Justin Fry, who was in his wedding. Yeah. But I'm feeling really good about the class. I feel really good that we're going to get David Sanders. Really good.
It's funny. We had in our notes about the commits, and I had this big David Sanders. Like, that is, to me, if there's anybody else that's left in this class that it's like, go get them, that's the guy. I think he's the one that could literally just come in and probably be a day 1 starter.
We all saw the picture he posted the other day with his teammates, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's wearing the Ohio State gloves, the Ohio State bandana. Yep. I mean, that would be that. I'm not saying that's the end all. I mean, he's going to UT this weekend for his OV, and his girlfriend goes there. But if he's like a lot of other high school seniors, he's probably wanting to get away from his girlfriend as he graduates.
Well, that's a nice time to have a clean break.
yeah. Easy. Yeah. So, Cook's coming in this weekend, Dan, and Luke, and then Michael DeBose is coming in this weekend too. So
Jay Cook?
I'm sorry, Josh Petty. Cook was already in. Sorry, Josh Petty and Micah DeBose, both tackles, coming in this weekend. So they're both very highly rated too. They're like top 5 in the class, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
So there's some, but yeah, man, if you could pair David Sanders with Carter Lowe, that's a nice looking class.
I mean, this is one of those times, like, I would. And again, there's a reason why I just talk about this, and I'm not in the coaching staff. I don't know enough about that, but this is one of those where I'm going to all those offensive linemen. I'm going, guys, listen, I can't even remember off the top of my head what the trophy is. Hey, do you guys want to win this like 3 years in a row? Best offensive line in the nation. Like, all of you guys come in. Let's just dominate the offensive line. Now, not all the guys are going to do that. Obviously, now with NIL, there's money and Lamborghinis and all the kinds of stuff, but that's where I'm going. Just, guys, come on, bring it in. Let's have the best offensive line. But
it's the Joe Moore Award, to answer your question. Yeah, and then is it the Outland Trophy for the best offensive lineman or something like that? Yep. All right. So speaking of the Joe Moore Award and people that have won it, Michigan unfortunately has won it. So Luke, from a national perspective, and we actually talked to Chef from the Cocaine Willie podcast about this a little bit. He kind of, almost downplayed it a little bit. And I was just curious, and if you've talked about this with other fan bases, do they think about Michigan's advanced scouting, the cheating over 2.5 years? You've done a lot of talk to other pod professionals on the tailgate, and what's their impression of this? They mad? I
think this is going to be probably a little bit longer of an answer, because I've tried to kind of break this down. The way that I see it from just looking through everybody else, right, is you've got a couple different, almost like levels, right? I don't think that there's anybody out there that's going to argue that they didn't cheat, unless they're just trying to get you riled up, or
they
aren't paying attention, right? Like, everybody, even we had Darren from Darren Talks Ball. He's a Michigan guy. We had him on, and he even said, like, hey, I'm not arguing that they didn't cheat. Like,
Darren?
Yeah.
Oh man, Dan, that's the guy you guys were going back and forth with in the video war.
Yeah, that guy's a freaking clown, man. When he started replying with video clips and within the Twitter feed, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's freaking clown.
Yeah. And personally, I love Darren. Like, I think he's a lot of, like, I enjoy him. He and I have some good banter back and forth. You know, again, that's where it's like Twitter is just kind of the, can end up being the cesspool of social media very quickly. But so just to your point, even he has said, like, yes, they cheated. I think what you then look at is kind of like the care factor, right? How much do certain people care? I think when you look at Group of Five, and then when you look at some of the lower ranking Power Five teams, so like you're getting your Vanderbilts, you're getting your, you know, those kind of teams, they are going, okay, yeah, they cheated. It has no effect on us. We have no bearing. You know, we're not going to the college or the CFP. We're not trying to get a Big Ten title. So yes, they did, but we're not going to really care. And I think that's kind of what Chef was saying on your show was it didn't affect us. You know, yes, they did, but hey, we're not gonna lose sleep over it because it didn't affect us.
Sure.
I think
we see what happens when Michigan assumed a team wasn't worth advanced scouting, right?
TCU, yeah.
Yep. Yep. And they had, you know, TCU played the game really well too. I mean, they while people make it seem like it's just this overnight, hey, just change your signs thing. That's definitely not how it works. However, TCU threw in enough wrinkles that I think it gave them some wiggle room that won them that game. But yeah, then you kind of move into teams that had a little more skin in the game. You think, you know, UT being here at, you know, in UT, the year that, and this is what I was telling you guys, we can get to that later, the South Carolina thing. I don't know if you guys looked into that, but, you know, UT fans don't like Michigan, want the book thrown at them. They want them wiped off the face of the earth for what they did, maybe did, given South Carolina their signs. Clemson has gotten out of it. FSU has, you know, last year thinking FSU might have possibly snuck in, even though they lost. Some of those teams, I think, are the ones that start going, you know, Alabama last year. Hey, if they didn't do this, we have a shot at either being in the playoff or we have a shot at, you know, did they have Alabama signs? And Alabama's now going, well, we would have been in the championship and we send Saban off with another championship. Those are the teams that I think are a little bit more prone to want Michigan to get punished heavily for this. So, but I think that's kind of there's this level, and you see lower teams, they did it, but let's just move on with life. Then you get into the teams that were affected who actually get upset about it and who are actually, you know, wanting and kind of paying attention to what's happening with Michigan.
I think that makes sense. So you mentioned FSU, and so I put that specifically in our notes because one of the things that we hear as Ohio State fans is Michigan saying, well, you know, we stopped because halfway through the year or through 6 games or whatever last year, we weren't allowed to do it anymore. We got caught. And so if you take those 6 games and you have to forfeit them or you call them losses, whatever you want, they were never then eligible for the college football playoff.
True.
So then FSU gets in because they're undefeated. So I think FSU has a real gripe if they come back and say, oops, sorry, we made a mistake. We should have done something.
I don't think FSU gets in if that happens. I think Georgia gets in. I think they were hell-bent on keeping FSU out because of the quarterback situation.
Well, okay, fair. Either way. Yeah. Well, then Georgia has a gripe. Either one of them.
So either one of them, I think both of those teams would have legitimate gripes for that. And that's, you know, obviously we don't have all of the information that was given from, you know, the FBI or whoever gave it to the Big Ten, to the NCAA. But that's one of the things, the 3-game suspension at the beginning for the, you know, cheeseburgers. Yeah. And then at the end for that, they did nothing. Harbaugh still coached all week. He still game planned. He still did everything. He just wasn't on the sideline. It wasn't that big of a deal. And I personally, and, you know, this might be a little bit of my bias leaking in, think that what the Big Ten did was not enough and should have been more. And if when we get everything out and when we can read through all the documents and see exactly what happened, I think there's going to be a lot more people who kind of look at the Big Ten commissioner and go, you didn't do your job. You should have there should have been more of a punishment if this is what had happened. Now, again, could be wrong. Maybe we get the information back and go, okay, yeah, 3 games was fine. I don't think that, just based on what we have proof of now. But I think that it ends up being the Big Ten commissioner not doing a service to teams like Ohio State, Florida State, Georgia.
I'm not sure, and I'm speaking out of hypothetical or assumption. I seem to recall that his hands were tied and limited as to what he could do without an investigation being completed. So much so that either the Big Ten and or the NCAA, they passed a new bylaw after this, and it was really quiet. But basically, they passed a bylaw that will allow them to, moving forward, dole out initial punishment prior to an investigation being completed, with the idea that more punishment can come. And I mean, I've heard that they refer to it as the Harbaugh rule or the Michigan rule.
I do remember hearing something to the effect of that there was the most that they were supposed to be able to do was 2 games, and then they ended up giving them 3. I don't remember.
They had to get a vote. They had to get approval somehow from the Big Ten commissioners, I believe, Dan, to get a 3-game suspension.
Yeah, it might have been 3 was allowed, and if they wanted to do more, there would have had to been a bit of vote, and they didn't want to pursue that. But yeah, I think they were limited as to what they could do. Now, what's interesting, I'd love to know if they could have said at that point in time, hey, listen, you have to forfeit the first 6 games of the year. Like, it's been proven you cheated, you're forfeiting those games. If that was on the table and that was a possibility, then yeah, I agree with you 100%, Luke. He's in retrospect, he's going to get flamed for that.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think he is in a hard position. Like, let's kind of set back there, because his job is not to cater to Ohio State. His job is not to cater to Rutgers. But his job is to look after the Big Ten as the commissioner. And so I think it does put him in a very hard position, because obviously from all visual aspects, Michigan is doing well. I think that when Michigan and Ohio State are both doing well, I think that's better for the Big Ten, and I think that's better for college football.
Absolutely.
But yeah, what do you do with that? What did he know? What didn't he know? And kind of what did he do? Yeah, we won't know until everything comes out, but I have a feeling that's what's going to end up kind of being the perspective.
Okay. So, I think going forward, the Big Ten is so much bigger now than Ohio State and Michigan, because you add Oregon, you add USC, Rutgers, because of what they're building out there. Like, don't sleep on Rutgers this year. They're going to win 10 games. You can mark that down.
That's the second time you said that. I got to look at their schedule.
Yeah, they're going to win 10 games this year, man. I have a lot of faith. So
I remember their record or their schedule not being.
It's not hard.
10 games is definitely doable. I remember.
Yeah, Shiano can coach, man. He can coach.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not. Just 10 games is a lot of games, bro.
Yeah, I know. they're gonna be in a playoff. No, I'm just kidding. But so Dan and I have a running joke with Michigan fans that the hammer's coming. And we talk about it, and a lot of Ohio State fans are saying that. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like the NCAA, or are you just like, hey, let's see what comes out, and let's see how much of this was Connor Stallions at Central Michigan? Yes. But, are you waiting? The answer is yes. But
I am always going to try and lean towards the kind of the more cautious side. So when I think about this, I'm very careful to say the hammer, because there's so many more things in play now. When you look at NIL, when you look at the Big Ten and the SEC both growing, and kind of the talks about these super conferences kind of coming out. So there's so much more that's in play. And realistically, I don't think their natty's going to get stripped. Obviously the college football playoffs and the NCAA are two totally different things. And I don't think that the college football playoff is going to want to go through stripping them. So now if you want to say there's going to be an asterisk by it, like I think that anything like what's going on right now, there will be an asterisk by it. And it's just going to happen when all of this stuff comes out. But I think where I start saying the hammer, I don't like saying the hammer, is because a lot of the things that we look at that used to be punishments 10, 15 years ago, official visits, scholarship reductions, really with NIL, scholarship reductions do not matter. Because we hear all the time, or I've heard a few times, I should say, of walk-ons who get an NIL deal that matches their scholarship. Of all this kind of stuff. So there are lots of things, punishments that can be covered up with NIL. Just like Ohio State, I grew up loving Ohio State. There's lots of guys who grew up loving Ohio State. They want to play for Ohio State. The same thing goes for Michigan. The same thing goes for these other big teams. So I understand why people will say that the hammer's coming. I get it. I'm not going to disagree that I think just from the information that we have that they did something wrong, that it was known about, that it was kind of prevalent through their entire staff. But when I think about a hammer, it's like, well, what's the hammer going to actually do? I don't think, I think back to the year that we had everything done. We still beat South Carolina in that bowl game.
Yeah.
They can take it back from us, but I still watched it. And I think that's where Michigan fans, and I think a lot of people are going to really end up, is they're going to be like, well, I still saw it. I still saw them beat it. I still beat everybody. And so I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to say the hammer's coming, but I also am not going to fault you guys for saying that the hammer's coming, because I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, well, the hammer emoji's definitely in my favorites on my phone. I do think the hammer is coming. And they can say that they saw it, but they're not going to be able to say that without the thought going through their head that it's tarnished.
Sure.
And to your point that with NIL, a lot can be, circumvented in regards to sanctions. You got to have a viable NIL program for that to be true.
True.
And all intent and purposes right now, that's something they're struggling with, according to their own fan base. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying regarding what can be circumvented with NIL. And, if they go to this roster limit, then yeah, maybe. But I just think I don't see how they don't vacate all of 21 and 22.
Yeah.
I just don't see how that happens. And then that's going to be the argument, right? Is like, well, if you vacate those wins and you knew they were cheating up until game 6 or 7 of 23, then shouldn't you vacate those? Okay. If you vacate those, then yeah, here comes the asterisk.
Right. And that's where it's such a hard.
I also don't believe their NCAA title will formally be stripped. I don't. And that part sucks because they should have never been able to play in that game. But I will always have the satisfaction of knowing that the whole thing is tarnished.
Yeah. Well, and you look at all the, even now, how many shared titles did you have? Everybody wants to put this, how many titles does somebody have as the, whether or not you're a good program. Well, now it's going to be, well, how many shared titles you have and how many of the titles were you cheating when you did? And so it's, there will, again, I think there will always be an asterisk. This is one of those things that I think as Buckeye fans in 20 years, we will be looking back at and going, oh, I remember when this came out. Oh, I remember when, I was sitting in my kitchen and I read the note that, there's a cheating scandal at Michigan. So we'll all remember it. It'll all be a talking point, but we'll see how big the hammer is. I just don't know how big it's actually going to be.
I'm just grateful for Ryan Day's brother uncovering all this to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, those RICO charges have been hanging over his head for so
long. I know.
Long.
He's got to be so scared.
They just get it over with.
Yeah.
All right. So, Luke, a surprise for you. So I know you got some bad news regarding this, but
I did.
We got a copy of your application for the director of football operations at Michigan. So I thought we could talk a little bit about this.
Sure. No, yeah, this was I was in a group chat with a bunch of guys from different teams, and just kind of we talk football between all of us from different perspectives. And one of them posted, "Hey, the director of football operations is open at Michigan," and I'm like, I had some free time at that moment, so I started throwing my resume in, filling out all the information, and it said like, "Oh, you have to have a cover letter," and I didn't have a cover letter for it, so I just, again, this is my trolling. It's how what are all the little things that I know everybody says that I can put in there, and so I sent this as my cover letter.
My own disguises.
Yes. Yeah, I did. I was in theater in high school and some in college, so I still have some. I dressed up as Thor for Halloween, so I've got the wig and the helmet. So I've got. I think I could get on some sidelines.
Already have my own computer, phone, and camera. Only require a company card and Venmo account. It's beautiful.
Yep. Yeah. So and I will secure the Venmo account, so nobody's going to be able to see what I was what I was paying for. So. But yeah,
it's not that hard to put it on private, right?
No, I don't know. I don't even know if mine's on private, but I'm sure I could figure it out in the next 15 minutes if I needed to.
Man, you sent this to us, and I was just dying. Like, this is beautiful. I saw you posted it before we got on.
This is great.
I was officially rejected this morning. I was my wife and I were in the garage working out, and I got the official notice of thank you, but no thank you.
Oh, so they literally replied to you?
He did. They did. He put it on Twitter right before we got on.
Oh my gosh! I thought you put this on Twitter.
He put that on. No. The thank you letter.
Yeah, I sent the thanks but no thanks email. The generic. We have gone a different direction. Email.
Yeah,
so they better be good.
They went in the direction of Columbus.
Yeah.
Right.
I love this at the bottom. Have become fluent in Michigan traditions. Bet.
Yes.
that's great, man. I love this. So thanks for letting us share this and have a little fun with it. Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate the sense of humor, if nothing else. So
really, it's when you see an opportunity, you gotta take it. And listen, I know that I've said I'm an Ohio State fan, but I try to see from a 30,000 foot view in terms of NCAA. I do like to kind of come down sometimes and, be a homer and do those things. So.
That's
something
cool.
to be said for lowering your standards every once in a while.
Every once in a while, you've got to. Yeah, you got to have a little fun.
So I have a cousin who's married and lives in Florida. Mm-hmm. And he's originally from Ohio, but has lived in Florida, just longer than I've been alive. He's older than me. And every so often I get the SEC crap from him. He likes to have a little fun with that, and he's like doing the whatever this is, where they're chomping or whatever.
Oh, gator chomp.
I just think it looks like they're doing a big clap. But so, and recently I heard from him on Facebook about, like in Messenger, that it's not fair that OSU has so much money. So I'd like to know from your perspective, and I know, Dan, you live in Nashville, so how mad are all the SEC teams that Ohio State doesn't need McDonald's bags anymore because we've got American Eagle and Express and, all these other companies lined up with NIL?
Yeah.
Are they mad?
So, I will say I don't know if it's anger. I don't know if it's them being mad. I think that we're playing their game and we're beating them at it.
Okay.
For so long, I watched a video of somebody talking about, how are these Alabama recruits getting all these nice cars? You're like, well, you do know that Nick Saban owns Mercedes dealerships and none of their names are on the lease. Like, they lease these cars out and they're not on, so there you go. There's no paper trail. So everybody's been doing stuff like this. We all, everybody wants to act like they're above reproach and say, "Oh no, we don't pay players. Everybody else does, but we're the angels." So everybody wants to do it. I think the thought is that Ohio State's just doing it better right now, and I think this was the year that they just said, you had the NIL collectives that really, honestly, they're tired of losing to Michigan, and they're going to do whatever they need to do. And so it's like, hey, donate money, we can get players.
Yeah,
the fan base did that. To me, I start to question the other fan bases. Like, hey, you guys all have collectives, you all have places that you can send money to. Do it. If you're upset about it, put your money where your mouth is. Send your money to the collectives. Help them out. But I mean, I don't know if it's anger or if it's just like, hey, we're doing it better than you, and so they're upset about that. And their coaches just need to step up.
I've probably posted 3 or 4 times now that we're just operating at a different level. The folks that are spearheading the foundation are crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just, they did a phenomenal job when the portal was first open to get the grassroots contributions going.
Mm-hmm.
But they immediately started to think bigger, and there are significant, major, wealthy donors that they've got to buy into making this happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even know if this has been like publicly announced. I don't think there's any reason not to, but like NetJets just came on as a major donor.
Yeah.
To the foundation and like a partner in the program. So what does that mean? That means that all these recruits' families are going to be getting flown in for games.
Mm-hmm.
NetJets is awesome too.
Yeah. And, so there's no longer a concern about the distance between Charlotte and Columbus for a particular recruit, and then they're opening charters in other cities. Yep. They posted the other day about being down in Miami. There's a huge family down there in Miami that are Ohio State graduates and, very, very wealthy. And they're talking about opening charters in other cities, strategic charters in other cities to help with the alumni base. I've already reached out to them. I want to be involved with it in Nashville.
Yeah.
Because I wear my Ohio State gear everywhere now. And, I get like, it's 100-1 between the OHs that I get and the sneers that I get from SEC people. Like the SEC people they don't say anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like OH, like every time I go out, it's OH, And so there's, I think there's a huge alumni base here, huge fan base here. So I want to be involved in it, but they're just doing things at a different level.
Yeah. And shout out to Brian Schottenstein and Cardale too. Cause when if you'd go back 2 years ago, you guys can look this up. My most watched pod episode was a 5-minute thing about me bitching at Austin Ward for not backing the foundation and making fun of them. So it's like from February of 2 years ago of 2022, because the foundation was just getting up and running. Yeah. And I had said that I had supported the foundation and so on and so forth. And I couldn't understand why the podcast daily wouldn't get behind them, and why we're all rowing in different directions and we should be rowing in the same direction. So if you wonder, it was called the Buckeye Blitz. It was before Dan and I did our pod. It's a couple of years old now, but man, I was hot. And I posted on Twitter, and it was like it was probably my most watched thing, and it was just me ranting about Austin Ward being a terrible human being for not supporting the foundation. So, and I never even said his name, but people knew who I was talking about.
And I think that really what Ohio State has done has kind of shown everybody else like what is possible. Like, hey, here's the roadmap almost to like how you can use your NIL, how you can, the teams that like, UT honestly has a pretty good stockpile. They are not hurting at all. But it's just like, it's how you use it as well. Even if you've got what Ohio State has, you still have to figure out how to use it and use it wisely. So, and they've done a really good job at that.
Yeah. So
real quick, I don't pay enough attention to other programs, NILs. If it doesn't show up on Twitter, or ESPN, I'm probably not going to know about it. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I have not seen anything show up on Twitter or ESPN about any other former players making sizable, consistent contributions to their NIL collectives. And we've now seen something from CJ Stroud. We just saw something the other day from Mike Conley. My understanding was a $500,000 donation earmarked for basketball. I mean, if you think about the resources you have there, it's like when we talked about it recently, Chad, like, where's Dave Portnoy? Where's Tom Brady? Why aren't they contributing significantly to Michigan's NIL? I don't get it. So we've got a good thing going here. So
yeah. So sticking with NIL, I want to do a couple like compare contrast. So Michigan's NIL apparently is a train wreck, as far as I can tell, and then you've got Texas having a what I'll call a Lamborghini party for their recruits. So, Luke, if you don't mind, I'll have Dan. Do you want to give me your take on this? Because I don't even have words to express how like weird I thought it was.
You know what? It is what it is, man. It's like it's everything that's happened in the past, but now it's out in the open, and there are no rules, there are no guidelines. Anything goes. So more power to them. Do I think that was a little cheesy to have the engines revving like that? Sure. You know what? But you had one recruit recently say he wanted a Lambo deal as part of his NIL package. So, I mean, you got to remember where a lot of these kids are coming from and what they grew up with and everything else like that. Like, I know, okay, right, PG-13, but let's be honest, in the past, you used to take these kids to strip clubs because they never went to strip clubs and saw a naked girl, right? I mean, you heard all about it with Miami and stuff like that. Now, with all this other stuff being out in the open, the cars are the thing, man, the whips. The kids love the whips,
I'm a car guy. I love cars. Well, you know that. I love cars. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, more power to them. If a kid makes a decision based off of that, then so be it. I'm 100% confident in what Ohio State's got going on in regards to culture and mental health, and life after football. And
shout out to Ryan Day and then Urban Meyer for starting Real Life Wednesdays too for that stuff, Dan.
So yeah, I mean, it was a little cheesy, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I chuckled about it.
All right, Luke, over to you, man. Two contrasting things here. Michigan apparently has no money, and Texas has too damn much money.
Yeah, I mean, for Michigan, I'm kind of with you. And again, I don't know enough about, the only reason I can speak on UT and that's Tennessee, not the one that's on the other side of the Mississippi.
Okay.
But the reason I can speak to Tennessee is because Michael and I have talked about it. He's a UT fan, so I kind of get a little more of that from him. Now, in terms of Michigan, I don't know exactly what their NIL deal is. I do know that I've seen a lot of people on Twitter and everywhere else complain about it and complain about what they aren't doing and what they don't have. And so, yeah, I would say, Tom Brady, Portnoy, all these, big name Michigan guys, like, what are you doing? How are you contributing? I think one thing that it has shown is, even for me as an Ohio State fan, hearing everybody talk about the brotherhood, it's only been in the past few years that I've actually seen that and gone, oh, they're not joking. This isn't just a, the thing that they say. This isn't just the mantra that they teach them to tell everybody. But you do see it. You see guys going and enjoying playing with each other. And, we just get the number 1 and number 2 in the secondary. And what was Delaney, number 4 or 5?
He's top 3, I believe.
Yeah. And so you have these guys who are all excited to go play with each other and compete. You've got 5 quarterbacks who I thought that 2 of them were going to leave in the portal. And they all stay because, hey, this is the brotherhood. We're going to compete. So, there is something special, I think, that is going on at Ohio State. Now, the Lamborghinis, I was literally on the treadmill running when I first saw that, and I was laughing. And I had to stop and I had to get off because to me, it just seemed so cliche. It just seemed so, hey, what's the thing that we could get that like my 7-year-old would probably love that. He would love to stand there and hear all the cars rev. So that was my first response, was like, this is so cliche. I think it's dumb. I would not, like, if I was walking in as a recruit, I would like probably just turn around and walk out. Now, however, I have to then kind of step back and go, I'm 40 years old. I'm not
You're a
looking
man.
for that. I'm a man. I'm a man. So I don't know what the kids are looking for. And if that helps them land one guy that they really need or they really want, who am I to say that that's dumb? You know, so it's,
Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying. So it's one of those, like, you know, everybody's different. I'm not a car guy, so I hear loud cars and I just go, somebody's got a loud car. You know, it's nothing to me. But there's probably one kid who was walking in going, this is the coolest thing ever.
Well, two things on what you talked about. So on the Lambo thing, that was on the heels of Jamie French coming out and saying he wanted a Lambo deal wherever he went. And so I can't help but to think
dream NIL deal. You're right.
I can't help but to think it was a troll job to the rest of college football. Like, hey, and he was on his official that weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, I mean, kudos to them for trolling everybody.
Yeah.
The UT thing, this is something that I haven't thought about. Well, I've thought about the fact that the Haslams have to be involved with Tennessee's NIL.
I would hope so.
I mean, right? But it'll be interesting to see what happens with NIL when there starts to become guardrails. Will people like Haslam, will people like Stephen Ross, who owns the Dolphins?
Ross.
Yep.
Will those type of people be able to contribute to college NILs to their alma mater or anywhere for that matter? Or will they be restricted because of how it could potentially influence future NFL free agency decisions? That's a topic for another day, but that literally just went through my head while we were sitting here thinking about it. Like, you know, because I'm starting to think to myself, like, as a Browns fan, I want the Haslams to give as much money as they can to get UT recruits in there, as long as they don't take them away from Ohio State, because I want those guys to, you know, if they're stars, to play for Cleveland one day.
Well, and the other thought behind that is, you know, there's been a lot of talk about bringing all the NIL stuff in-house. And so if it all comes in-house and it's Ohio State doing it, not the collectives, not the, you know, everybody else, then at that point, all they're doing is donating to their alma mater. So, you know, so I don't know how that gets earmarked or if they're able to say, hey, this is for this, you know, but yeah, I don't know. But that's an interesting thought.
I think, you know, there was, when this whole revenue sharing thing came out in $20 million a year, like, NILs aren't going away.
No.
I mean, like, that's not enough money to support a major program. I saw something the other day where Michigan had $4 million earmarked and they're trying to get that back up to $15 million. Like, that's their first step to trying to get into the NIL game and be somewhat competitive. Like, that $20 million is going to the entire athletic department.
Yeah.
Now, if the NIL function does come in-house, I think you're going to see a lot of those people that, like, I could see Brian Schottenstein and Cardale Jones. I can see them getting hired by Ohio State
for sure,
to run their collective.
Drew from 1870, like those guys that have been
Drew from 1870 has left 1870.
Apparently.
Did he? He's gone off and pursued some sort of tech venture. Yeah, there's the 1870 is struggling.
Okay. All right. So, that I will transition back to the Lambo thing. So I'm a huge car guy, not a Lambo guy. Wasn't really sure. I mean, I think it's whatever. But Luke, like you, I laughed and I was like, my son would love this. He's 6, as far as I'm concerned. But then I also think about, and I'll just caveat this.
You're going in and out. You're going in and out, brother.
How's that? Any better?
I don't know what happened.
Apparently, what he had to say about the Lambos was not
kosher.
It needs to be censored.
I wonder if he's going to be talking when the video's on, like when this downloads and everything. Well, until he comes back,
sure.
Let's get into the recruits. What do you think is happening to what do you think about the camps this weekend? Who's coming in?
I think it's going to be really interesting. Honestly, I did not look at all of that. Let me take a look. Who do you know who all's coming in?
Yeah, we've got Josh Petty. We got Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, JOK's brother. We got Micah DeBose, Max Roy. I've got to look at the list.
Sure. I'm big on Petty.
There's like 10 or 11 guys coming in. Isaiah West.
Okay. Petty's the one that I love Petty. I think that he's going to be that he has the potential to be great. So I'm really hoping that they can get him, and hope he has a good visit, because I think he's just a mauler.
Yeah, the rumor with him is that his family made it known that he was only going to consider schools that his sister was apparently considering, and I guess she's chosen FSU.
Okay. Well,
so
Ohio State,
I think
get this girl a scholarship.
That's where the crystal balls are for him, is to go to FSU. I think Jackson Lloyd was already here, right? He was here last week.
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
Yeah.
If it wasn't last week, it's been recently.
Yeah, with the linebacker, they canceled Madden Ferriamo, I think, was the kid that was supposed to come in as well as a linebacker, but Ohio State actually canceled that visit, and they're going all in on. I guess we're going to call him Knob. That's not good. NOB.
Yeah.
No, but they're going they're going all in on him.
Okay.
There he is. You back?
I'm back.
Okay. Sweet. We were recording that whole time, right?
Yeah, you guys would have been. My power blipped and it killed my Wi-Fi and everything. So I don't know.
Well,
sorry about that.
If you ever watch Jux Productions, don't worry about editing that. Like,
yeah,
I love watching Jux show when he starts a topic over like 3 or 4 times, and he's just getting more and more frustrated with.
Yep, you can just see it. Man. You can see it building.
And I love the fact that he just leaves it in there, because it's like, listen, man, I'm a fan. Like, I'm a one-man show. This is what you get. Take it or leave it. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chad, we started diving into the recruiting weekend. Do you have the list of recruits
there? I do, yes, as a matter of fact.
There's like 10 or 11. Good. We knocked out like 4 or 5 of them as far as who they were going to be. Who's on?
Yes. So I've got Jonah Williams, Byron Lewis, Madden Ferramo, the linebacker, Josh Petty, London Merritt, Marion Dye, Phillip Bell, Brandon Finney, who has been climbing as somebody that the Buckeyes are interested in, Max Roy, Emmanuel Carmo. Now, this is JOK's brother, Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, Isaiah West, Cole Breeler, Micah DeBose.
Yeah, I don't think Byron Lewis is coming this weekend, is he?
Is he not coming now? Well, so
they canceled Madden's visit. OSU canceled it to focus on NOB.
Okay. All right. So that was per on 3 as of Wednesday night. So
interesting. Okay.
Now, of course, everything's always getting updated. So again, that's why I messaged you, Dan. I was like, I couldn't find anywhere that Micah DeBose had confirmed the visit this weekend until you text me.
No,
so
he's coming. So
yeah.
And I mean, listen, he lived in. Oh, that's safety. Winston committed to Michigan. He lived in Cleveland until he was like 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we always thought that we had a shot with him originally, and then he decommitted from Georgia, and he's been crystal balled to LSU, pretty heavily.
Yeah,
and people don't think he's going to get out of the South. He plays high school ball in Florida, but the fact that he's coming up for a visit, I mean, blood is pretty thick. He's got a grandmother in Cleveland, and
it's
less than a 2-hour drive.
There's always a shot. Yep. There's always a shot. You got to come out swinging. There's always a shot. So yeah, I mean, the fact that Marion Dye is coming back too, Dan. We talked about him on Tuesday's show. That maybe there was a London Merritt, excuse me, London Merritt and Marion Dye both coming in this weekend. I know that there was some concern that maybe those two were fading a little bit. So having them back on campus is a big deal. I like both those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Luke, I'd like to get your take. So Josh Petty, Ohio State got in on him fairly late. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts around him? Do you think he's a fit? Do you think he, is he just collecting a check for coming on an OV?
I really hope not. I'm pretty high on Josh Petty. Josh, I was telling Dan, before, when you were having technical difficulties there, like mm-hmm. He's a mauler. I think that's the word. I think it was Juck that actually said he's a mauler.
That's a good word.
That guy, his tape just looks different. I know he's like a 4-star. Mm-hmm. But I don't know where he's at. I think he's nationally ranked like 32, something mm-hmm. like that. So
in the mid 30s. Yep.
Yeah. In the mid 30s. So he's right outside of that kind of 5-star.
Okay.
He's just a mauler. And I just like the way he plays. I like how, he goes 100% every time, plays through the whistle. I want him. I would love to have him. So okay. him and David Sanders, if we could get both those guys. Yeah, that'd be nice.
I am more confident about David Sanders than I am of any other recruit left on the board
mm-hmm.
that we're going to get him.
I think so. Cool. I think there's a lot of little subtleties that you see with him. Just his demeanor, he kind of the antithesis of Jamie French. He's just the kind of quiet, steady, the little things like you mentioned earlier, his gloves, he's wearing his gloves in the locker room with the nice O on there.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that he's kind of locked, but weirder things have happened.
Mm.
So Chad, do you want to, we're running a little long here at this point. Do you want to close up with getting Luke's predictions for both the Big Ten season and the college football playoff?
Yeah, that's great. Let's do it. It wasn't in the notes, so if you want to come back another time, yeah.
Fine. I've been thinking about this, and I've not really come out with my rankings. But hey, why not? Let's go for it. I think. Do you want to do any? Like, you just want to go for it?
Yeah. Just give me an idea. What do you think? What do you think Ohio State's going to do? Through the regular season schedule, and then what do you think the playoff looks like, and who ultimately comes out on top?
through the Big Ten schedule, I've gone back and forth on the Oregon game. I think the Oregon game is the only one I wouldn't say that I'm worried about in terms of like not being worried about other games, but that's the one where I think they're like a 3-point, like less than a 3-point favorite at home. So neutral field, we've got like a point on them. And I just hope and I think that we get them. I think that 3 points is not enough. Not blowing them out or anything, but I think we beat them. I think we go through the regular season undefeated. Now I will say, it's kind of funny when I had Juck on our show as our Ohio State representative, and I got very confident. When I talk with other Ohio State fans, I start getting a little cocky, a little confidence. And I said something about Michigan, us beating Michigan by 2 touchdowns. And that was my prediction for that. I went and I slept on it, and I got up the next day and was like, I can't believe I recorded that. I don't know that I'm going to say 2 touchdowns. That's just too big of a game. I do think we beat Michigan. I want to say a touchdown. I want to say it's a 7-6, somewhere in that range. But I think Ohio State ends up undefeated through the regular season. I think that Big Ten title, we're going to see Ohio State, Oregon, number 2. And we're going to play them again. I think they're going to end up kind of going through the season with their only loss being Ohio State. And then in the playoffs, I don't know who. I think my group of 5 team is going to be Boise State. I think they're going to get in. It's kind of that group of 5 representative. I think we're going to see a big splash from Ole Miss. I see them making it. I don't know. I think Ole Miss is going to be in the SEC championship game.
They have a fairly favorable schedule with the new open divisions. It's not as bad as some of the others.
Their schedule lines up very well for them to have a great season. And they've added, they're just, if you go through, and we had a guy from Locked On Ole Miss on, and he told us, he said, if you go through and look at all of, like, I think it was On 3 and all their top 10 position group rankings, Ole Miss is in like all of them, every single one. And I went back and I double checked them, 100%. They're all there. So I started digging into their schedule or their roster a little bit more. And man, some of the transfers that they got in, really good guys. So I'm very high on Ole Miss. So I think we see them in there as a representative with Georgia. Those are kind of the teams that I've gotten to.
Okay.
I think Miami wins the ACC. I'm kind of high on Miami. I love Cam Ward. He was the quarterback that when all of the transfers were coming out, I was really hoping Ohio State would get Cam Ward. So I'm high on Miami. I just think this is a good year for them. I'm not very impressed with Clemson and Dabo and what they didn't do in the offseason. Klubnik at Clemson, he's been hit or miss. He's played some really good games, and he's played some games where you're just questioning him. So I think Miami's going to get there from the ACC. And
you think there's just one from the ACC?
It wouldn't surprise me to only see one. I think Clemson might sneak in there. But then from Big 12, I'm going Kansas State, possibly Arizona. Arizona,
baby.
I'm big on Noah Fafita.
That's my alma mater.
Yeah. Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I didn't know that, so I'm not just trying to pander to you, my friend. But
Brennan did a great job of keeping that roster together. Mm-hmm. They had a few guys hit the portal. A couple went to Washington with Fish.
Yep.
But they did a really good job of keeping the key pieces together, and then they brought in a nice recruiting class. And he's a really good coach. So if they pick up where they left off last year, I think they're going to surprise people.
I definitely, it would not surprise me. Fafito did some great things last year. And, I've told my way too early Heisman picks, Fafita's in about all of them.
Yeah.
Because I just think he has that, you got McMillan. Is it McMillan, right? The receiver, who's just doing outstanding things. That combination is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, they're going to put up some big numbers. And, they were one of the hottest teams in the country coming down the stretch last year. I want to say they finished with like 9 wins in a row. Maybe the only hiccup they had there was a close loss to Washington.
Yep. Who only lost to Michigan. So,
yeah.
So good team.
Yeah, I'm excited for them in the Big 12. And I'm excited to be able to watch them at a decent time this year. Now that they're playing teams in the Central Time Zone.
Right. You're not having to stay up late on those Saturday nights.
I couldn't, man. Yeah. I couldn't. I couldn't. And I'm not the type that would record a game and watch it. Because if I already know what happened, I'm not watching it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that.
But so keep going. You got Kansas State out of the Big 12, possibly Arizona.
Kansas State, possibly Arizona. I like UT in terms of Texas. I like both UTs, Texas and Tennessee. I don't think they're both going to get in. I think I'm going to bring that to Texas. So I think, Texas, Georgia, possibly Ole Miss out of the SEC. I think Ohio State, Oregon, maybe Michigan, just depending on what their year looks like out of the Big Ten.
They're going to go 8-4.
You think?
Their schedule's brutal.
Their schedule's brutal. It's just going to depend. They're going to bring that same kind of ground and pound thought process or that game plan, and it's just going to let's see if it works. Let's see if it works for you. They've got their offensive line is, I think, a lot of brand new guys, but a couple of them have played a lot elsewhere. So, they've got some pieces, but I think it's going to come down to quarterback play. I think Orgy ends up being the starter, and I just don't know what he's going to do. But I could see them sneaking into the playoffs. But I think ultimately, when it gets to the end, I'm going Ohio State, and I'm not gonna say You can decide if that's a homer pick or not. I think they just got the talent. We just need the offensive line, and we need whoever ends up being the quarterback. We just need those two things to do a little bit better than they did last year, and I think we're fine.
Nice.
Fantastic.
I got one last question. You know what I'm going to ask, right?
Will Howard or DB?
There you go, baby.
Okay.
Who you got?
This one's very tough.
Contrary to popular belief, there is no wrong answer here. There is no right answer here. I want to know who you think.
So here's kind of how if I could bottle up whatever DB has, whatever his energy, his moxie, I would love for a team full of guys that have his presence, because he's just got something different. I referenced back, if you remember the original Space Jam, when the Looney Tunes are getting killed by the Monstars and Bugs Bunny pulls out Michael's secret stuff. That's what DB has. He's got that secret thing that just kind of, even if his play isn't great, which I'm not saying it's not, that he just gets that little added boost from his presence. With that being said, I think I end up going with Will Howard. You know, I know that a lot of people say him and McCord stat-wise are kind of on the same level. But I think when you look at what Will Howard did with what he had at Kansas State, you give him the weapons he has here, and I think that he ends up being better. So I think as of right now, I'm saying that it's going to end up being Will Howard, but I was wrong once before, so this might be the second time.
Yeah, so the people that compare Will Howard and say he's the same as Kyle, I don't think that's fair. I've joked that he's Mobile McCord. My buddy Terry that was on the show dubbed him Mobile McCord, and I said it once on Scoop in a super chat, and Kirk's like, well, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, no, it's not. Like, even a mobile Kyle wasn't going to be good enough to win big games last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I think Will is light years better at Ohio State than Kyle was, because Kyle was just so limited. I think Will is elite in the RPO game near the goal line.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Juck went over the red zone success that they had last year with him, and it's undeniable. I mean, Will crazy. Runs it. Now, there is a huge difference, and I don't think a lot of people really understand it, because they'll say, oh, well, it's going to be like JT Barrett. It's not. JT Barrett was a QB power quarterback. Will Howard is not a QB power guy.
Mm-mm.
He runs the RPO and knows when to keep it and score inside the red zone at an elite level.
Yep.
I just don't trust his downfield accuracy. So let me ask you this. Do you go with Will Howard if Devin outperforms him throughout camp?
No.
Like the reports suggested happened in spring?
No.
Okay. Because there's a lot of people out there that would still go with him just based on his experience. And that's where that's the rub with me. I'm not anti Will Howard. I'm anti putting a guy in there that doesn't earn it in camp.
Yeah, I am 100% best player plays. I think that Ryan Day in the past has gotten burned by kind of sticking to that, like, oh, we're gonna play the senior, you know, we're gonna do that, and not that they always played the seniors, but just kind of sticking with guys for a little too long. I think that might have been what happened last year, to be honest. But I just think that Will Howard is going to come into his own. You know, DB has been here, right? He's been at Ohio State. Will Howard's coming to a new place, new teammates, new coaches. He's still getting his feet under him, in terms of being here. So I just think that he's going to end up kind of rising to the top. Now, if we get to the end and I'm wrong, that's fine. I think that you play DB. If he's the better quarterback, if he's the one who has showed in camps and showed in practices that he's earned that spot, then 100% you put. This is not a make or break year, in my opinion. It's not Heisman or bust. I hate those kind of, like, you know, oh, if you don't win, you were a horrible team and you shouldn't have been there. But if he's going to be the person who's going to get you there, you play him.
Yeah,
that's.
I think either one of them wins us a natty.
Yeah, and I mean,
I really do.
You could also, like you said, you brought, Will Howard, his goal line or his red zone stats were amazing. Put him. You can run a 2 quarterback system. You can put him in on the goal line. I mean, it's not the most favorable thing, but you could try that kind of stuff out. I mean, it's possible.
I think people will be surprised at Devin's ability to run the RPO game, because that's not what he was asked to run last year. He was asked to run QB power. He caught the ball and ran.
Yep.
That's not his game. His game is actually more in line with Will when it comes to the RPO aspect of it than I think people realize.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he got labeled as, injury prone and all that kind of stuff. And that just wasn't fair to him. Those were really weird injuries and stuff that doesn't happen. And, so anybody who's saying that he's injury prone, like get off that seat, because it's not true. Yeah. He's going to make it, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right. Cool, guys. Well, this was a great show. I really appreciate you, Luke, staying on, and then we went a little long, but thank you for being willing to do that. Sorry about my power blip. It blipped again. I text Dan in case something happened. I don't know. They must be outside working on the lines or something. But I really appreciate you. Again, if you guys haven't caught Luke's pod, it's The Tailgate. They do a lot of great material and have a lot of guests on from other pods around the country, and I've enjoyed every show I've watched. So appreciate you again, Luke. Thanks for coming on. Any final words?
OH.
No.
All right. You guys have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, and as always,
go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.